When you hear the name E. coli, your mind probably jumps straight to scary headlines about food poisoning, right? But what if I told you there's another organism out there with an almost identical name that's a completely different story? All right, let's play detective. We're about to crack a classic case of mistaken identity, one that happens in medical labs all the time. So this is the big question, isn't it? The mix-up that causes so much confusion. And the answer is a very simple, very firm no. But to really get why, we need to meet the key players in this little drama. Okay, here's the lineup. First, we've got our main character, Entamoeba coli, a harmless, single-celled protozoan. Then, there's the one you've definitely heard of, Escherichia coli, that's a bacterium. And finally, there's the actual villain of the family, Entamoeba histolytica. So the big takeaway here is that our organism isn't the bacterium, and it's definitely not the one that makes people sick. So if it's not a villain, what exactly is it? Let's build the real profile for Entamoeba coli and find out what it's actually doing in our gut. The word you need to know is commensal. Think of it like a perfectly fine roommate. It lives in your gut, benefits from the environment, but it doesn't cause you any harm or damage at all. It just hangs out. And here's its official file. Just look at the domain, eukaryota. This means it has a complex cell with a proper nucleus. We're talking a totally different kingdom of life from bacteria, which are way, way simpler. So let's get specific. It's what we call an endoparasite, meaning it lives inside the body, in this case, our large intestine. And it's a protozoan, which just means it's a single-celled organism. It's not a metazoa, like a big multicellular worm. Nope, it's just a tiny little amoeba. So how does this microscopic roommate get around and, make a living? Let's take a look at its life cycle. It's actually pretty straightforward. Now, you can find Entamoeba coli pretty much all over the world, but in countries with really good sanitation and water treatment, like the Netherlands, it's not really passed around locally. Instead, it's usually considered an imported organism, kind of like a biological souvenir that people bring back from international travel. This diagram lays it out perfectly. It all kicks off when someone ingests these mature cysts. You could think of them as little armored survival pods from contaminated food or water. These pods travel to the large intestine, they hatch, and the amoeba sets up shop. But, and this is super important, it's a non-invasive colonization. It doesn't burrow into your gut wall. Finally, new cysts get passed out in feces, ready to start the whole cycle over again. The real secret to this organism's success is that cyst stage. This little pod is incredibly tough. It can handle the acid in your stomach, no problem. It can survive for months outside a body as long as it's moist. And get this, it's even more resistant to the chlorine in our water than its dangerous cousin, Entamoeba histolytica. Okay, so we've established it's harmless, but its very existence creates a really interesting puzzle for doctors and lab techs. And here's why it's a dilemma. People who have Entamoeba coli almost never have symptoms. Finding it is usually a total accident, maybe during a routine checkup for something completely different. If a patient is feeling sick, this little guy is almost never the reason why. And this is the heart of the problem. Imagine you're a lab tech. You're looking at a stool sample under a microscope, and you see an amoeba cyst. The question is it the harmless roommate, Entamoeba coli, or is it the dangerous homewrecker, Entamoeba histolytica? Just by looking, it's incredibly hard to tell them apart. So how do we solve the mystery? Well, the old school way is with a microscope, but that's really tricky and you can make mistakes. Modern antigen tests are way better because they're designed to find proteins made only by the dangerous E. histolytica. But today, the real gold standard is molecular testing, or PCR, which positively identifies the organism using its unique DNA. And this is how it works. Each one of these species has its own unique genetic sequence, basically a DNA fingerprint. PCR tests are designed to look for these exact sequences, so there is zero guesswork involved. It's a 100% positive ID. It's like the difference between having a vague description of a suspect versus having their actual fingerprints on file. Which, of course, brings us to the next big question. If a lab does find Entamoeba coli, what are you supposed to do about it? Well, the medical world is actually in total agreement on this one. It doesn't matter if you look at big international groups like the CDC and the World Health Organization, or national guidelines like in the Netherlands. The answer is exactly the same. You do not treat Entamoeba coli. Finding it is not a reason to prescribe medicine, period. The Dutch approach in particular is all about practicing smart, evidence-based medicine. They officially call Entamoeba coli an apathogen, an organism that does not cause disease. So if a patient has diarrhea,
the top priority isn't to give them unnecessary drugs. It's to treat the actual problem, which is dehydration, using simple and effective oral rehydration salts.
So if it's harmless and we don't treat it, why do we even care about finding it? What's the real lesson here?
And this is probably the most important takeaway from this whole explainer. Finding Entamoeba coli is not the diagnosis. It's the clue. It's a sign pointing to the real story. So what is it a clue for? Well, its presence is rock-solid proof of something called fecal oral contamination. It tells a doctor, without a doubt, that their patient has eaten or drunk something that was contaminated with fecal matter. It's a bioindicator for hygiene. And that means prevention isn't about some fancy medicine. It's about getting the basics right. Wash your hands, drink safe water, and handle your food properly. Simple as that.
We put all this information together for you using a Gemini deep search. And if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you can find a complete list of all our sources in the linked Notebook LM document. So, what do you think? Has this changed how you'll react the next time you hear the name E. coli? We really hope this explainer cleared things up. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives like this one, and definitely let us know your thoughts in the comments below.